There's a kind of discipline that makes people look at you with a mix of fear and admiration. Not because you're special, not because you're lucky, but because you've become someone who simply cannot be broken. While most people make excuses, you show up. When they're tired, you stay consistent. When they stop, you keep going quietly, steadily, relentlessly. The world calls people like that crazy, obsessive, not normal. But that's the highest compliment you can ever receive. Because to reach that level of discipline, you must walk a path most people will never have the courage to take. Think about it. How many times have you set a goal, only to quit halfway? How many times have you told yourself, this time it'll be different, but a few days later, you heard that little voice whisper, I'm tired, it'll start again tomorrow. Motivation fades, excitement disappears, and your results stay the same. You see, the problem isn't that you lack willpower, it's that you keep negotiating with yourself. Every morning your mind asks, should I get up now? Do I really need to work out today? Maybe I'll do it later. And as long as that question exists, you'll always choose the easier path. But hundreds of years ago, halfway across the world, a group of Japanese Zen monks discovered how to end that inner negotiation forever. They lived by one rule called Guji, continuous practice without gaps. Since the Muebate hat century at Aiheiji Temple in Japan, a bell rings at exactly Bafei Bamliam every morning. And for over Tamtram years, not once, not a single time, has a monk failed to wake up at that exact moment. No, ill sleep in today. No, I'm too tired. No, ill start again tomorrow. Because inside their minds that question doesn't even exist. That's the secret. True discipline isn't about willpower, it's about eliminating the choice. When you no longer give yourself an option, the action becomes effortless. When it's no longer decision, it becomes identity. You don't need motivation to breathe. You just breathe. That's what mastery feels like. The point where doing the right thing becomes as natural as inhaling and exhaling. And those who reach that state, they don't talk about being disciplined. They are disciplined. You can see it in their eyes, in their calmness, in the way they do what must be done, day after day, no matter what. They don't say, you'll try to meditate every morning. They say, I am a person who meditates every morning. They don't say, you'll try to read more. They say, I am someone who reads. When an action becomes part of your identity, the negotiation ends. That's the line that separates people who try from people who transform. But to reach that point, you have to make a trade. A part of you must die, the weak part, the lazy part, the version of you that always needs to feel ready before acting. That death is painful, but it's also the beginning of rebirth. It's where the old you, the one full of excuses, disappears and the new you, the one built on consistency, begins to emerge. Guji isn't just a system, it's a complete shift in identity. It forces you to stop chasing motivation and start living by structure. It turns I'll try into I do. Because the truth is, tomorrow will never be different if you're still the same person today. When you live by Guji, there is no I don't feel like it today. There is only I do it because that's who I am. And that's when you'll start to notice something strange. People around you become uncomfortable. They'll tell you you're extreme. They'll call you obsessed. But what they really mean is, you're doing what they wish they could do. The world admires talent, but it respects discipline. Talent is a gift. Discipline is a choice, a structure you build with your own hands. Someone might be smarter, faster, or richer than you, but they'll never beat you if you refuse to stop. That's what you're about to discover in this story. How an ordinary man named Raphael, a programmer who could never stick to a habit for more than 2 weeks, became a man so consistent, so relentless, that even the people around him began to feel afraid. He was born disciplined. He simply learned the one truth that changes everything. Never let the chain break. Not tomorrow. Not ever. If you believe in growth, if you want to master yourself, start today. Subscribe to the channel Life Philosophy, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment below sharing one habit you'll commit to for the next balmy days. Your comment today might just be the first step toward the person you've always wanted to become. Raphael's story. The awakening of a man who stopped trying. Raphael was a smart, calm software engineer with a good job and a steady income. The kind of life most people would consider successful. He wasn't lost. In fact, he had tried nearly everything to improve himself. Working out, meditate, reading, building better habits. But there was one thing he could never master: consistency. He'd start with excitement the first day, he'd wake up early and hit the gym. The second day, he'd feel proud. By the third day, the familiar voice in his head would return. I'm tired. I'll rest today and make it up tomorrow, and then he'd stop. Every habit ended the same way. Full of energy. Week 2, we excuses, surrender Sunday. Guilt and another new plan. Then the same pattern all over again. At some point, Raphael started believing he just wasn't born disciplined. He downloaded habit tracking apps, created reward systems, even found accountability partners. None of it worked. Nothing lasted longer than 2 weeks. Then one night, frustrated and restless, Raphael came across an article about Japanese Zen monks. It told the story of Guji Temple, where, for over Tamtram years, every single morning at exactly Bafe Bamia, a bell rings and every monk wakes up to meditate. Not once has that tradition been broken. Not for war, not for weather, not for exhaustion. Raphael couldn't believe it. How can anyone maintain such consistency for centuries? The answer was a single word, Guji: continuous practice without gaps. For these monks, meditation is a habit. It's identity. It isn't something they choose to do. It's something they are. To them, missing one day is an option because the question, should I do it today, simply doesn't exist. That realization hit Raphael like lightning. His problem wasn't weak willpower. It was the fact that he kept leaving himself a way out. If he was tired, he'd rest. If he was busy, he'd postpone. He failed, he'd restart later. But the monks had no later, no escape, no back door. When a monk takes his vow, it isn't a promise to try harder. It's a declaration of a new identity. He stops saying, "I'm trying to meditate," and starts saying, "I am a meditator." That one shift changes everything. Normal people say, "I'll try." Disciplined people say, "I am." Raphael decided to do the same. He took a piece of paper and wrote, "I am a person who meditates for how many minutes every morning at Numfei Kongkongami." For 9 consecutive days. He signed it, taped it to his wall. He took a photo and posted it online. He told his friends, his coworkers, his girlfriend. The reactions came quickly. "Man, you're taking this way too seriously. You'll quit in a week just like before. Why make such a big deal out of it?" But Raphael smiled, because for the first time he understood something powerful. Every skeptic, every eye on him, was fuel. When a commitment becomes public, it's no longer optional. Your brain is wired to fear losing face. For thousands of years in tribal societies, losing status meant exile. And exile meant death. Even today that instinct remains, and Raphael decided to use it. The first morning he woke up at Namam. The second, he did it again. By the third morning, the old voice returned. "No one will know if you skip today." But this time, Raphael pictured himself having to post online that had quit after only 3 days. That image burned in his mind. He got up, sat down, and meditated. Not because he felt motivated, but because his integrity demanded it. He realized something most people never will. Motivation fades on her dust. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. The old version himself, the one that gave in to excuses. He still felt tired. He still wanted to sleep in. But instead of listening, he simply observed the feeling. He understood that what mattered wasn't how he felt, but whether the chain stayed unbroken. Each morning he finished his meditation, even if it was messy, imperfect, or short. And with each completion, something subtle but powerful was happening. He was becoming a different person. Not someone who was trying to meditate, but someone who meditates. Not someone chasing motivation, but someone defined by consistency. Raphael began to understand the secret of the monks. Discipline isn't about fighting laziness. It's about removing the option to quit. When you eliminate choice, when the decision no longer exists, when the action becomes automatic, that's when freedom begins. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The days ahead would test him even harder. Fatigue, travel, sickness, distractions. But from that morning on, the moment he got out of bed on day 3, Raphael was no longer the same man. He had crossed a line. From the kind of person who tries to the kind of person who does. And once you cross that line, there's no going back. The secret of the monks. The power of unbroken practice. As Raphael dug deeper into the philosophy of Guji, continuous practice without gaps, he realized it wasn't just a method of training, it was an ancient mental operating system, one that Zen monks in Japan had preserved for centuries. At the Guji temple, every single day at exactly Bafe Bamia, a bell rings. From the Muebate Hat century until today, that ritual has never been missed. No, it's too cold today. No, you'll do it tomorrow. No excuses. Because in the minds of those monks, there simply is no other choice. Since the time of Master Dijin, who first introduced the idea of Guji, monks have understood one truth. Interruption is the enemy of awakening. The moment you stop, even for a day, your old habits, your old patterns, your laziness come rushing back like a flood. Guji isn't just about persistence. It's about absolute continuity. When you practice something without leaving a single gap, your mind gradually enters a different state, a state where action and identity become one. Raphael read one of the monk's writings: "When the bell rings, I don't decide to get up. I simply get up." That line struck him. It wasn't about willpower anymore. It was about erasing the need to decide. He realized that what had exhausted him all these years wasn't the action itself. It was the constant negotiation that came before it. Every morning he would ask himself, should I get up now? Maybe after breakfast? Is it better at night? And those tiny questions drained his mental energy before he even started. People with true discipline don't negotiate with themselves. They remove the negotiation entirely. Raphael understood he needed non-negotiable rule. A fixed time, no exceptions, no flexibility. He chose not because he loved mornings, but because at that hour the world was asleep. No messages, no emails, no distractions. Just silence, and no excuse left to delay. It was the perfect time to face himself. The first few days were brutal. His body resisted. He was tired, frustrated, even angry at himself for forcing this new routine. But he still sat down to meditate for minutes. The second day, same struggle. Third, no easier. Yet by the seventh day, something changed. He woke up 2 minutes before the alarm. His body had begun to learn. His brain had started to anticipate was coming. At 9 a.m., his eyes opened, his body moved. No thought, no argument, no decisive action. And that was when he understood the first true secret of Guji. Do it at the same time every day. Not because it's convenient, but because it removes time from the equation. When your schedule changes daily, your brain has to redecide every time. But when the time is fixed, the decision disappears. And when there is no decision, there is no resistance. That's why monks never ask, when you've already decided. Forever, Raphael began to feel the subtle shift. Each morning he no longer prepared to meditate. The routine became effortless, automatic, but soon a new problem emerged. Even though his schedule was fixed, he kept changing what he did. Some mornings he read, other days he did push-ups, sometimes he meditated. His brain had found a new loophole. It wasn't negotiating one anymore. It was negotiating what? He realized this was weakening his discipline. He remembered Degen's teaching. Practice does not need novelty. Repetition itself is the path through which the mind is forged. So Raphael locked his system down completely. Jaime push-ups, minutes of meditation, minutes of reading. Same order, same every single day, no exceptions, no improvisation. His friends called him robotic. His girlfriend said, "You're acting like a machine." But Raphael smiled because he point. Discipline begins when emotion ends. Emotion is a variable. Discipline is a constant. By the third week, his mind was screaming for variety. This is boring. You'll burn out. Mix it up a little. But Raphael stayed the course. He understood something people ever grasp. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the gateway. On either side of boredom lies freedom, the moment when you no longer need to force yourself, because doing the right thing has become natural. By week 6, he was halfway through his practice before he even realized he had started. There was no longer effort, only flow. That was the true essence of Guji. It's not about endless effort. It's about repetition until effort is no longer required. Guji turns action to instinct. It transforms willpower into identity. And once that happens, you no longer ask, how do I stay consistent? Because you've become someone who simply can't stop. The inner war, when discipline meets biology. Even after Raphael had built his namama meditation habit, he found himself facing a far greater enemy, his own body. Every morning he woke up on time. The battle with the alarm clock was over. But a new war had begun, a war between reason and biology. His body didn't care about promises, pride, or public declarations. It only cared about comfort. It wanted to stay in bed. It wanted to avoid effort. And that's the truth about being human. We are biologically programmed to seek ease and resist discomfort. The first few mornings felt like war. As soon as Raphael opened his eyes, his mind started whispering familiar excuses. You're exhausted. Sleep a little longer. 10 more minutes won't hurt. Rest is important. Don't push yourself too hard. Those words sounded logical, but they weren't logic. They were seduction. They were the soft voice of his weaker self, trying to pull him back into safety. Even though he had made his practice public, Raphael still had to fight this battle every single day. Because reputation might win against shame, but it doesn't always win against biology. Then one day, he came across another teaching of Zen Master Degen, a concept called non-negotiable hours. In monasteries, everything operates on absolute timing. No one asks, what time should we meditate today? Because the answer never changes. Baza Bamu am. No one decides when to practice. The decision was made centuries ago. Raphael realized something profound. Every time I ask myself when to do something, I'm wasting energy I could have used to actually do it. He began to see that humans burn enormous mental fuel simply deciding what to eat, what to wear, when to start, when to stop. Each decision drains willpower, and once willpower runs out, discipline collapses. So Raphael made his Siju untouchable. Namza I am. Me, every day. No, just this once. He told himself, no think doing. And the difference was immediate. He discovered that once the time was fixed, his brain stopped resisting. Resistance only exists when you still have a choice. Take away the choice, and the struggle disappears. The first few mornings, he still had to force himself out of bed. By the third day, he moved before his thoughts could interfere. By the 10th day, it felt almost effortless. He no longer asked, should I do this? He simply did it. But a few weeks later, a new problem appeared. Even though the time never changed, Raphael kept altering what he did. Some days he meditated. Some days he exercised. And once again, his mind found a new way to negotiate. At least him still doing something. It still count. But that flexibility, that constant change was poison to consistency. He remembered Dejen's words. When the mind still chooses, practice is not yet complete. Only through repetition does the mind become free. So Raphael locked the sequence completely. Jaime push-ups, minutes of meditation, minutes of reading. Same order, no variation. His girlfriend said, you're acting like a robot. But Raphael knew, when people call you extreme, it means you're finally doing something right. He understood something the world constantly forgets. Boredom is not the enemy, it's the threshold. If you can endure repetition long enough for boredom to dissolve, you enter a new realm, where action flows naturally without effort. By week 4, the voice in his head had grown quiet. By week 6, he realized he'd been halfway through his morning routine before even noticing had started. No more struggle thinking. Just rhythm, and that was when he grasped the core truth of Guji. True discipline isn't about never stopping your effort. It's about repeating until effort is no longer needed. Guji isn't about training the body, it's about reprogramming the mind. It turns action into instinct, willpower into reflex, discipline into identity. At that point, you no longer ask, how do I stay consistent? Because the answer is simple, I can't not do it. It's who I am, and that was Raphael's turning point. The moment he stopped living from motivation and started living from structure. The moment he stopped trying to become disciplined and finally became discipline itself. Well, one way, when repetition becomes power, most people believe that variety keeps things interesting, that changing things up helps you stay motivated. But Raphael discovered the opposite. It's actually variety that kills consistency. Every time you change what you do, your brain must make dozens of tiny new decisions. What should I train today? Should I meditate first or read? How long should I do it for? Those micro decisions create cracks. Cracks where laziness creeps in, where negotiation returns, where willpower slowly leaks away. Raphael had fallen into that trap before. He still woke up at Namami, but he kept optimizing his routine, switching exercises, shuffling the order following his mood. The result, he slipped right back into the same old cycle, negotiation, delay, surrender. Then he remembered Dejen's teaching. Variety scatters the mind. Only through singularity does the mind become still. So Raphael made a radical decision. He locked the system completely. Jaime push-ups, minutes of meditation, minutes of reading, same sequence. Every day, no day looked identical. Every hour identical. The order, the intensity, the duration, all fixed. His friends laughed. Raphael's obsessed. This is friend worried, you're living like a robot. But Raphael smiled. He knew that what others saw as boredom was actually the beginning of transformation. By the 3rd week, his mind began to revolt. It screamed inside his head. This is still not a machine. Life needs change. You'll wanted to quit. But then he remembered Dejen's words. When the mind still seeks novelty, it has not yet been tamed. Raphael realized something profound. Resistance is the final test before transformation. If he could push through this boredom, a new level of discipline awaited. And it did. By the 4th week, the inner voice began to fade. By the 5th, it was gone. He no longer forced himself to act, he simply acted. Each morning he started his push while still half asleep, then meditated, then read, like a perfectly memorized choreography. No hesitation, motivation needed, no room for doubt. That was when Raphael finally understood the essence of Guji. When action is repeated long enough, willpower is no longer required. Because body and mind have become one, discipline was no longer something he did. It was something that happened through him. He realized a paradox. True freedom doesn't come from having choices. It comes from no longer needing them. As long as you can still choose, you can still hesitate. Once choice disappears, peace begins. His body started moving before his mind caught up. Some mornings he'd already be halfway through routine before realizing it. Everything flowed, naturally, effortlessly, silently. That was the most terrifying level of discipline, when willpower no longer drives you because willpower has become unnecessary. When effort disappears, only presence remains. An MIT researcher once said, when a behavior is repeated in the same context for about so days, the basal ganglia of the brain takes over. You no longer decide to do it, you simply do. Raphael felt the truth in every fiber of his being. He no longer needed reminders. No more planning, no more forcing. At Namami, his body simply entered the state of practice. He had crossed the hardest part, the stage where most people quit, telling themselves one day off won't hurt. But Raphael knew better. The moment you allow a gap, the old habits rush back stronger than ever. That's why Guji called Guji the one way, because once there's only one way, the mind stops fighting. If there are two paths, you'll start negotiating again. But if there's only one, there's peace and unstoppable momentum. Raphael found freedom in discipline, peace in repetition, and strength in simplicity, because sometimes what others call boring is exactly what makes you unbreakable. Practice without gaps, when one day off can destroy everything. One of the biggest lies people tell themselves is this: it's okay if I skip today, I'll make up for it tomorrow. It sounds harmless, doesn't it? But that single thought has killed more consistency than laziness ever could. Guji once wrote, when practice is interrupted, even for a moment, the old habits return. Raphael learned this the hard way. He realized that what destroys discipline isn't failure. It's the gap between two moments of action. He called it the perfection trap. So many people believe that if they can't do something perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all. If they can't meditate for how many minutes, they'd rather skip the day. If they can't complete the full workout, they'll wait until tomorrow. All or none sin is what makes them lose everything. Raphael understood that this doesn't require perfection. It requires continuity. A bad day is better than no day. A small action is better than none. A slow step forward is still progress. He began to rethink what rest really meant. Before, when he was tired or busy, he'd say, "I'll just skip today." Now he told himself, if I can't do everything, he'll do something, but I will never stop. That single shift in mindset changed everything. One morning, Raphael caught the flu. His body ached, his throat burned, and his energy was gone. But instead of giving up, he did something different. He lay in bed, took 3 deep breaths, got up slowly, and did 2 push-ups. Then he meditated for 1 minute and read 1 page of a book. Tiny, insignificant, but to him was a victory. Because he knew, as long as the flame still burns, no matter how small, it hasn't gone out. But if it dies completely, he'd have to start from zero again. And restarting is 10 times harder than continuing. Raphael began to see that there's a difference between a rest day and giving up. A rest day is intentional, taken to recover and grow stronger. Giving up is emotional, done out of weakness or comfort. Even elite athletes have rest days, but they never rest because they don't feel like training. They rest so they can train again tomorrow. Guji used a beautiful metaphor. A river never stops flowing. In a drought, it may become a trickle, but it still moves. If it stops, it ceases to be a river. It becomes only a memory of one. That line hit Raphael deeply. He realized that continuity is the soul of progress. The moment you stop, you're no longer someone who practices. You become someone who used to. And he swore he'd never belonged to the second group again. On day Bornway, Raphael had to travel for work. Flight at Bornau. Meetings all day, no gym at the hotel. To most people, that's a perfect excuse to take a break. But Raphael had changed. He did push-ups in the airport bathroom, meditate in the Uber, and read on the plane. Nothing was perfect, but everything continued. That night he realized the truth. Discipline isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. He finally understood why it called Guji practice that sustains itself. When your discipline becomes part of who you are, you don't force it anymore. It runs on its own. People started noticing. Some admirers thought he'd lost his mind. "Come on, man," one coworker said, "it's just 1 day off, who cares?" Raphael smiled. 1 day off doesn't destroy you. But the habit of allowing yourself to take one, that's what does. He began to see the world in 3 kinds of people. The average person acts only when it's convenient. The disciplined person acts even when it's from the master. The true practitioner of Guji acts no matter what, because if you need perfect conditions to move forward, you'll never move far enough to change your life. By day Bornway, Raphael looked back and realized something powerful. None of his days were perfect, but none were missing, and that made all the difference. He had grasped the ultimate principle of Guji. Let the current keep flowing, even if it's just a single drop. As long as you don't let the flow stop, nothing in this world can stop you. Solutions. How to stay steady when life hits you hard. No one escapes unexpected chows. One morning everything's fine. Then suddenly, your kid gets sick, the car breaks down, your boss calls for overtime, the power goes out, or traffic traps you for hours. These are the silent killers of discipline. Not because you're weak, but because you weren't prepared. Raphael had been there before. Every time something went wrong, the same excuse appeared. I'm too busy today, I'll make it up tomorrow. It's not my fault, I didn't have the right conditions, you can't control everything. And just like that, after one reasonable excuse, his discipline collapsed. One single exception was enough to destroy months of progress, but this time Raphael refused to let it happen again, he asked himself. How did Zen monks keep practicing for centuries, through war, hunger, and disaster? The answer stunned him. They didn't wait for problems to happen. They had already prepared for them. In monasteries, if the meditation hall floods, they move to the dining room. If the dining room burns down, they meditate in the courtyard. No debate, no delaying, no complaint rings, they sit. No ifs, no buts. Raphael realized that true consistency isn't about avoiding chows. It's about pre-planning for it. So he did something almost no one does. He wrote down every reason he had ever quit before, and then created a solution for each one. If it rains, he'll work out in the garage. If guests are over, he'll meditate in the bathroom. If I'm drunk, he'll still do 2 push-ups, meditate for 1 minute, and read 1 line. If I travel, he'll meditate in the car, read on the plane, and exercise in the hotel hallway. Every possible obstacle now had a pre-made answer. No hesitation, no negotiation. He called this the pre-solution principle, because in moments of chaos, people don't make smart decisions. They make easy ones. If you haven't prepared, your brain will always choose the path of least resistance, which usually means quitting. But if you've already decided what to do, your mind goes on top a lot. You don't need motivation. You just act. A study from Yale University once showed. When people plan specific actions for specific goals, they reduce failure rates by over 80%. In other words, if you plan your worst days, you'll win even when you're at your weakest. Raphael began to feel a shift in his mind. He no longer feared interruptions. He no longer got angry when plans fell apart, because deep down he knew there was already a way forward. When it rained, he didn't complain about missing his run. He simply switched to body weight training indoors. When the power went out, he didn't sulk. He meditated in the dark. When friends came over unexpectedly, he quietly woke up 10 minutes earlier. No more internal debate. No more wasted energy. Just continuity. By day by day, something incredible had happened. He had gone more than 2 months without missing a single day. And without ever forcing himself. Everything flowed naturally, because the decisions had already been made long before. Raphael realized, discipline isn't built in moments of chaos. It's prepared in moments of calm. When the storm hits, there's no time to think. If you have to decide in the storm, you've already lost. But if your plan is ready, you just act. And that's what makes you unshakable, because strength isn't about never falling. It's about never stopping. From that day forward, Raphael was no longer controlled by circumstances. He became the one who controlled them. Whether it was rain or sunshine, exhaustion or clarity, he still showed up. And that's when he reached the 6th level of Guji. Action no longer depended on conditions. No more if the weather's nice, then no more if I have time, then only one truth remained. I will do it, no matter what. The transformation. When discipline makes others step back in respect. One morning, Raphael realized he was no longer the same person. He didn't need alarms to wake up. He didn't need motivation to begin. He didn't need reminders to stay consistent. Everything simply flowed. His body and mind had become one seamless system, a living embodiment of discipline itself. He no longer forced himself to act. He simply lived in rhythm, the way a river flows downhill or the sun rises without effort. Habit had turned into instinct, and that instinct began to draw attention. His friends noticed something different. He never complained, yet always finished what he started. He never bragged about self-discipline, yet lived it effortlessly. He did post motivational quotes, but his presence was motivation. Someone asked him one day, how do you keep going like this? Don't you ever get bored? Raphael smiled. I don't do it because I feel inspired. I do it because it's who I am. He had discovered the secret that most people miss. That motivation fades, but stability endures. While others chased emotional highs, he built a foundation that didn't depend on mood or weather. This was the stage Dijin called selfless action. When there's no separation between the door and the doing, you no longer think I have to work out. It simply becomes, the workout happens. One morning, Raphael went for a run through the same street where he once used to stop halfway. His legs no longer resisted. His breath was steady. His mind was silent. He wasn't fighting himself anymore. He had become the man he used to dream of being. And strangely, there was no pride, no arrogance, only peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on good days, but the kind that stays even when everything falls apart. Because now he truly understood, the world may change, but I do not have to. That quiet strength made others respect him without a single word. They saw him running in the rain, meditating amid noise, reading when he barely had time. They stopped laughing. They started wondering, could I live like that? And that's when Raphael learned something profound. True discipline does need to be preached. It radiates. It doesn't come from forcing others to follow, but from becoming someone others naturally want to follow. He recalled Guji's words. A true practitioner doesn't teach by speaking. His life is the teaching. Raphael began to feel that power. He no longer argued, no longer needed to defend his choices. He didn't react when people mocked or misunderstood him. He just kept moving. That inner steadiness changed the way people looked at him. Some admired him. Some even resented him. But none of that mattered anymore. Because when you live with discipline, you stop caring about impressions and start caring about evolution. You're not competing with anyone. You're simply trying to be more accurate than yesterday. He realized that the true reward of discipline wasn't muscles, money, or recognition. It was a soul that no longer depends on external order to stay calm. He no longer feared storms, nor wished for sunny days. Every day was the same, another chance to practice. That's when he finally understood why monks smile through hardship. Because a disciplined soul doesn't need to control the world, it only needs to master itself. That was the pinnacle of Guji, when discipline is no longer an effort but a state of being. And Raphael understood this. After all the exhaustion, resistance and struggle, what remains is only stillness and strength. He didn't need to explain anymore. People saw him, and they understood. The final level. When discipline becomes freedom. There's a paradox that few people ever understand. True discipline doesn't imprison you, it sets you free. For years, Raphael believed disciplined people were the ones trapped. No freedom, no spontaneity, no joy. But after months of living by the Guji system, he saw the truth. Those without discipline are the real prisoners. Prisoners of procrastination, prisoners of unstable emotions, prisoners of promises they can't keep. People who can command their own minds are slaves, to comfort, to impulses, to excuses. But those who have mastered discipline, they are free. Because nothing owns them anymore, not laziness, not fear, not mood swings. They no longer wait for the right feeling to act, they simply act. Raphael remembered his old life, the endless cycle of motivation and failure. Every Monday began with determination and every Friday ended in surrender. Every habit lasted 2 weeks at most. Every goal was another wound on his confidence. He lived in a cage of his own broken promises. Now that cage no longer existed. Every time he acted without hesitation, every time he followed through instead of thinking about it, he felt a deep, quiet freedom rising inside him. Freedom not to do whatever he wanted, but freedom from everything that once controlled him. One of his friends said, "You've become like a robot, man. Does that exhaust you?" Raphael smiled. "If being a robot means I live with peace, focus, and purpose, then he'll gladly be one." Because he knew something most people didn't. People fear discipline only because they've never tasted the peace that follows effort. When you finally conquer yourself, every small act becomes a quiet joy. When the alarm rings, you don't groan anymore, you're grateful. Grateful for another day to train your body, your will. While others sleep, you're alive. And in that silence, you feel an invisible power. The power of someone who owns themselves. Guji once wrote, "The one who masters body and mind. Nothing in the world can make him tremble." Raphael lived that truth daily, not because he was stronger than others, but because he no longer needed things to go his way in order to stay calm. He stopped fearing chows, delays, and setbacks, because he realized, as long as my practice continues, nothing is ever truly lost. From that moment, life became simpler. His work improved not through consistency. His relationships deepened not through effort, but through presence. Even his health and energy felt effortless, like flowers that bloomed on their own after a long rain. He no longer forced himself to stay disciplined, because he had become discipline itself. One morning, as he finished his routine, Raphael looked into the mirror. The man staring back was the one who used to say, "It'll start tomorrow." It was someone who simply does today, and every day. That's when he understood the essence of Guji. It isn't about endless repetition. It's about rebirth, the transformation from someone who tries to be disciplined into someone who simply cannot live any other way. And at that level, discipline looks frightening to outsiders. Not because it's harsh, but because it represents something they've buried. The death of weakness. When that weak part dies, a new person is born, steady, silent, and free. Guji doesn't make you a better version of yourself. It makes you a different one. Someone who doesn't seek comfort but clarity. someone whose peace comes not from control, but from mastery. And Raphael realized something beautiful yet unsettling. If your discipline makes people uncomfortable, you're doing it right. Because average people feel safe around mediocrity, but when they see someone unshakable, they feel a deep pull, a silent reminder of who they could be. If you've read this far, remember this truth. Discipline doesn't take your freedom, it returns it. Because real freedom isn't doing whatever you want, it's doing what's right even when you don't want to. That's the final level of Guji, the point where your body, mind, and soul move as one, where discipline becomes freedom and freedom becomes your natural state. When Raphael reached his Chimite day, he stopped counting. Because by then he understood something profound. The goal was never the 90 days. The goal was the person he became during those 90 days. He started uncertain, with half-hearted promises and a fear of failing again. But he ended in silence, the kind of silence that only appears when a person has truly conquered themselves. Guji, the discipline without interruption, is not a system, it's a way of life. A bridge between chaos and clarity, weakness and strength, confusion and peace. During that journey, Raphael didn't just learn to wake up early, meditate, or read daily. He learned how to transform. He learned that discipline isn't about forcing yourself. It's about becoming someone who no longer needs to be forced. No one is born disciplined. It's forged. Through failure, through exhaustion, through those mornings when you'd rather quit but still get up anyway. Because real discipline isn't about doing things when you're motivated. It's about doing them when you're not. And Raphael realized the world will never fully understand people like him. They'll call you obsessive. They'll say you've lost balance. They'll think you're too extreme. But the truth is, greatness has always looked extreme to those who live comfortably, because people who live by Guji don't chase comfort. They chase freedom. When others saw Raphael as a machine, he knew he was living as a free man, free from laziness, self-doubt, and the endless loop of making excuses. And on the quiet morning of day 91, he no longer needed anyone's approval, because he had finally earned his own. People often say to change your life, start with one small habit. But Dijin once wrote, do not start to change, start to continue, because continuation self is what changes everything. If you're hearing this now, ask yourself, are you ready to let the weaker version of you die, so that a stronger one can be born? If your answer is yes, start today. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait to feel ready. Just start with one simple, continuous action. Because remember, discipline does take your freedom away. It is the path to freedom. And when someone tells you you're not normal, smile. Because that's the clearest sign you're finally becoming extraordinary. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to Life Philosophy, turn on the notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us, what habit will you commit to without interruption? Your story might just inspire someone who's about to give up. We'll meet again in the next episode, where we'll continue to explore the path of awareness and inner freedom. Until then, keep walking your path. Keep your promise to yourself. And remember, you don't need to try to become your best self. You just need to never stop becoming. Life Philosophy, where every story is a lantern guiding you back to yourself.